What is going on, everybody out there? I am Lamont at large. Today we are at the Laurel Cemetery here in Dallas, Texas. We're going to go walk around, of course, go check out some graves, some of them notable, some of them famous, most of them not so famous. Without further ado, let's get rolling. This is the first time I've been to this cemetery, and let me tell you, this place is absolutely massive. It sits on about 150 acres and has almost 65,000 graves. Definitely can spend weeks on end just exploring the entire area. So right here is a mother and daughter. Mother's name is Norbia Irene Nichols, and she is buried alongside of her daughter Rosemary Nichols. And mother and daughter both died about, I want to say, a little over 2 years apart from each other, but they both died of tuberculosis. And Rose's father is right here. This would be her father, Johnny Thomas Nichols. And on Norbia's side are her parents, Felix and Rosie Lee. Yeah, that man had to bury his wife and his daughter over something that nowadays is still a serious disease, but not like how it was back in the olden days. Let me tell you, tuberculosis was almost a death sentence, and the date escapes me. Maybe the early 50s is when we started either developing drugs for it or developed a vaccine. But I don't know about you guys, but when I come to these cemeteries, let me tell you, I always whisper to myself, I thank God that I was born in a time of modern medicine, because if not, to be an adult, especially on the old frontier days back in the 1800s, pretty rare to see an old person. Wasn't too many of them around. You'd be almost lucky if you made it to your 5th birthday, because back in those days, I believe about 1 out of every 6 children died before the age of 5. So you guys always should thank your lucky stars that you were born where, if you have a cold or the flu, that more than likely there will be some kind of medicine that can cure what ails you. David here was an iron worker by trade, and he had developed lung cancer, and it had progressed into stage 4. It spread to his stomach, got him so sick and weak he had to quit his job. And 1 month before his 28th birthday, he passed away. During his autopsy, they determined, because of the cancer, that he suffered a heart attack. We're going to be walking up to the final resting place of music legend Stevie Ray Vaughan, arguably one of the top 10 greatest guitarists of all time. And, I'm pretty sure there's some people out there that will disagree with me. I'm not the greatest judge of guitar skills, but I'm pretty sure most people would throw Stevie Ray Vaughan in their top 10 guitarists of all time. I wasn't the biggest fan of his style of music, which is kind of like a bluesy rock style. And growing up as a kid, whenever we talked about music, people would always, at least in the inner circles where I hung around, would always say he was one of the greatest guitarists that ever lived. But nobody really talked about his singing, and he's a pretty damn good singer. if you want to look some of his music up on YouTube. And he's from Dallas, Texas. He was born out here October 3rd, 1954. And kind of like a lot of other rock and roll singers, he quickly ditched high school and dropped out because he wanted to be a rock and roll man, and he definitely achieved his dream for sure. And toured all over the world. He performed with the band Double Trouble, and they just went all over the planet spreading their gospel. And this guy probably was only famous, I'm gonna say, about 6 or 7 years. This is his final resting place right here, as you can see Vaughan Estate. And you got some bandanas. I'm gonna add my own there pretty soon, as a matter of fact. I got it right here. I could appreciate a great guitarist when I hear one. And if you ever want to come out to Laurel Cemetery and visit him, it's pretty easy to find it. It's like on an island right in the middle of the road. And this is his marker. He was only 35 years old when he died. He was playing a concert up in East Troy, Wisconsin, which is basically some kind of like a ski town resort. And after his concert, he was in a helicopter with 4 other people. And as soon as they took off, they went up, flew right into a mountain. Later on, the NTSB declared that it was pilot error that was the cause of this crash. He was only 35 years old. Only 35, that's pretty damn young, if you ask me. And, definitely after his death, he, got even more popular, like how often it happens like that. And definitely, I would say, a cult following. Got many guitar picks left over here. Stevie Ray Vaughan, guitar god. He fell out of a moving car and fractured his skull in multiple places, and that is how he died. I don't know if he wasn't wearing a seatbelt and there was a car accident and he went out the window, or maybe he was playing and hanging on to cars. I don't know. Definitely there was a write-up somewhere in a newspaper about this young boy's death, but very hard to find a lot of newspapers. A lot of news, all of our news, a long time ago, was all given to us by either the TV, and before TV, it was all newspaper. So you got to imagine all the days, all the weeks, months, years, all the newspapers. It's always going to be difficult to find, to go through old newspapers and find stories of exactly how people passed away. Step into my time machine and allow me to take you back to March 26th, 1998. We're in Dallas, Texas, and it's about 7 p.m. We got a couple of 19-year-olds, Yogi Hearn and Delvin Dials. All his friends called Yogi Yogi for short. Now, Yogi and Delvin, they need to make some money because they don't have any, and they want to go have some fun. Now, normally when you're 19 and you want to make some money, normally you have a job, kind of like how I did, kind of like how you did, and you get paid once every 2 weeks, you get your check, you spend it all, and then you repeat the process until you retire. But not these two guys. Nah, these guys, they didn't want to work for it. They'd rather take from what you have made in your life. They'd rather take from you. Now, Yogi was not any kind of stranger to the law, because by the time he was already 19, he had burglary, robbery, and sex assault on his record. So he is definitely no stranger to the judicial system. So on this early evening, Yogi, Delvin, and two of their friends, Dwight Burley, 20 years of age, and Teresa Shirley, 19 years of age, all four of these people are riding around town thinking of ways to make money. And these guys, they're armed to the teeth. In their possession is two shotguns, a .22 caliber pistol, and a Tech 9, which is basically, I guess you would say, it's an automatic 9mm. They had scored that one from a robbery the night previous. So they start discussing ways of making money amongst themselves. And one of the Einsteins says, hey, there's maybe a guy that I know that if we steal a car, we could take it to him and he'll chop it up, and maybe we can make $500. Now, guys, there's four people in this little gang, and you got to think. You got to use your thinking skills. Whatever illegal acts that you commit, you got to split that money up four ways, or at least you got to give something to the other two people in the back seat so they won't tell on you. But they're not thinking about this. They're just thinking about a quick, easy come up. And so these guys see this quick, easy come up in Plano, Texas, which is about 15 minutes north of Dallas. They see 23-year-old stockbroker Frank Mazier. I apologize if I mispronounced that last name. Frank was washing his beloved 1994 Mustang at one of those car washes where you pay, put in the quarters to wash your car. And Yogi says, hey, look at that guy right there. That's a pretty nice car. Let's just take it from him. And, I'm sure the other guy, Delvin was like, yeah, okay, yeah, we could do that. So they pull into the bay next to him, and both Yogi and Delvin pull out their guns and say, hey, give us what you got. But instead of that, they want to take the car, and everything is happening really fast. And I'm pretty sure Frank is like, oh, take whatever, So they force Frank into his car while the other two drive the other car, and Yogi and Delvin, they drive him about 20 minutes south to right around this area, right around Oak Cliff. Very, very bad area. If you don't live in Oak Cliff and you have no reason to go, stay away from there. So they take Frank to some an abandoned area, like a place, like an industrial area. And according to the eyewitness testimony of Teresa Shirley, because she later on would go and testify against the others, she said that Frank pleaded for his life, had his hands up in the air, and Yogi and Delvin, they were basically just toying with them, and they were waving their guns. Just like that. And all of a sudden you hear a series of gunshots. And Frank's body is instantaneously riddled with bullets. He falls to the ground. By this time now, he's probably been shot at least 6, 7, 8 times. And for good measure, Yogi takes the gun and points it at his head and shoots him a couple times. So they all get into their cars and they get out of there. Now they're looking for this chop shop. So they've already killed this guy. All right, man, where's this chop shop? Well, they couldn't find it. Or maybe there never was a chop shop. Maybe he was just, talking mess, whatever. So they later abandoned the car, and early the following morning, a man going to work discovered the bullet-ridden body of Frank Mazier, and they called the police. and they start doing their investigative work, and they learned that Frank had washed his car at a car wash in Plano. They go to all of the businesses in the area to get, whatever video surveillance footage that they can find. So this convenience store across the street, they have a camera, and their camera is pointed at their parking lot out towards the car wash. They review the footage, and they are quickly able to identify Yogi and Mr. Delvin Dials. They find these guys, I want to say, don't quote me, very, very quickly, maybe the same day. They were holed up in a motel, so they quickly arrested the two. Now, it took them, because they're looking for the other two, they're looking for Teresa and Dwight, and it took them about 8 months to find those two. So eventually, by then, they found the 4 horsemen of the idiot apocalypse. So while they're doing their investigation, they start coming up with several witnesses who are more than willing to testify against Yogi. And it seems like probably that night after the murder, Yogi was bragging to people who would want to listen to him that he had, quote, domed some white boy. He domed him. Means you shot a gun into his head. Dome. So you have that. You have him laughing. People saying at the party he was laughing about the murder. He thought it was funny when he killed this guy. And then they also look at all of the nasty things that he already has on his record from his previous life of crime. And this was absolutely a murder that did not have to happen. They could have easily just taken his car, did whatever with it, and that was it. They didn't have to kill him. They did not have to kill him. Getting a job at McDonald's would have been a lot easier than getting sentenced to die via lethal injection and spending the rest of your days on Texas death row. And that is exactly what happened to Yogi Hearn. His co-defendant, Delvin Dials, he received life in prison. And the other two, they received 10 years of prison, and then they were all let out. They're all done probably by 2008. They probably got released early for good behavior. And one Yogi Hearn was executed via lethal injection, and this is his final resting place right here. His last words were, quote, "I'd like to tell my family that I love y'all and I wish y'all well. I'm ready," unquote. As I always say, payable on death. You got a young kid who seems very violent, and you can only guess, oftentimes, what were the parents like? What was his home life like? Can't always blame the parents, but 95% of the time, it's always the parents or the environment that the parents are rearing the kids in. But regardless of what he did serve his sentence. So, and one 23-year-old Frank Mazier brutally lost his life while begging for it because he didn't want to get killed. Like how me and you, we both don't want to get killed. I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine having somebody pointing a scary looking gun at you and just waving it around like it's a game? You know, we see things like this often on, television and movies, but it's a whole nother experience when you're pointing one of those scary looking guns that you only see in the movies and your life is flashing before your very eyes. Travis was playing with a gun 3 days after Christmas 1945, and he accidentally shot himself. He's buried alongside with his mother, and to her right is Travis's father. He died a couple of years before his son. I don't know how he passed. Does anybody recognize this man? If you're a history buff, you probably know who he is. If you're not, I'm gonna tell you. His name was J.D. Tippett, and he was a police officer for the city of Dallas. November 22nd, 1963, President John Fitzgerald Kennedy has just been shot. Within 1 hour after being shot, he would be declared dead. All North Texas law enforcement agencies, their radios are broadcasting a be on the lookout for a Caucasian man, early 30s, 5'9" to 5'11", what a slender build. Officer J.D. Tippett, who at that time had worked for the police department for about 11 years, is patrolling the Oak Cliff section of Dallas, which is south of downtown. He's driving down the street and he notices a man that fits the description of the man who murdered the President of the United States. He rolls up in his patrol car to the man, lowers his window, and starts talking to him. I'm not sure what was said, but Officer Tippett proceeds to put the car in park. He gets out of his vehicle to talk to him. Little did he know he was talking to the assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald. As soon as he gets out of his car to approach him, Oswald pulls out a gun and shoots Officer Tippett 3 times. Tippett falls to the ground, and in front of quite a number of witnesses, puts the gun right to his head and pulls the trigger. He's killed instantly. Now later on, Oswald would be caught in a movie theater not very far from the murder scene. Now, in a future video, let me tell you, I'm going to unpack a lot of things about this case, because that is one of the events that has definitely changed this nation's history, that has been investigated over and over again. And, in the future, I might be doing a little video about it myself. Just when you look at it, a very, very, very odd story, to say the least. And this is Officer J.D. Tippett's grave right here. Badge number 848. And he's buried next to his wife, Marie Frances Tippett. I believe she would later go on to get remarried, but of course she wanted to be buried next to her first husband. And at that time, the average Dallas cop's monthly salary was only about $500 or so. So when he was murdered, he had a wife and 3 kids. So back in those days, we didn't have a GoFundMe, but they were able to raise money from donations from businesses and the public good. And they raised almost $250,000 for that family, and that was the money that was used to raise J.D. Tippett's kids and probably put them in school. J.D. is buried next to Carl Jackson Cook, badge number 302, badge number 302. He was responding to an alarm. Somebody was trying to break into either a supermarket or some kind of a business. And when he got out of his vehicle, he was shot by the robber multiple times. He was killed right there. He was only 20 years old. I believe that is the youngest police officer I've ever seen, or grave I've seen, that was murdered in the line of duty. His murderer was later caught and was sentenced to life in prison. On May 9th of 2019, Vanessa Romero was driving to go meet her mother and her sisters for breakfast. And on that day, it was raining. And she lost control of her vehicle and it overturned, and she died in the ensuing accident. This is Ashley Ramirez. She was only 22 years old when she died in a very tragic motorcycle accident. December 23rd, 1935, almost Christmas time here in Dallas, Texas. Former police detective John Roberts, 59 years of age, is driving down the street, minding his own business. He just retired a few years ago, and he's enjoying that retirement. So he stops at a gas station to get a little bit of gas. Little did he know that when he was approaching the door to open to go inside to get that gas, that the place was being robbed by 27-year-old psychopathic killer Augustus Beard, who had recently escaped from the penitentiary in North Carolina. So as he opens the door, he's like, yo, wait a minute. Now, John always carried a .38 caliber revolver everywhere he went, because you never know when something like this will happen. And when he opens the door, he sees what's going on, and he reaches in his pocket for his gun. But unfortunately, Augustus was quicker. His gun was already out, so he sees somebody reaching for something, and he turns around and shoots John Rush Roberts multiple times. By the time the ambulance arrived, there was nothing that they can do. He had already lost his life. Now, eventually, Dallas, they put out an APB for this guy. They don't know who killed former Detective Roberts, and eventually they caught their man. And he was promptly arrested, tried and convicted, and sentenced to die in Texas electric chair. And this is his grave. John Roberts right here, and he is buried right next to his wife, Margaret. And just a story that you would have never knew about walking down this path at the Laurel Cemetery here in Dallas, Texas. Okay, guys, that concludes the video. I am being bombarded by mosquito bites. They must love me this late evening here in Dallas, Texas, and I came ill-prepared, didn't have any mosquito spray. You might have won the battle, but you most certainly will not win the war next time. I will be better prepared. Live, but not live, still alive by the grace of God. I am Lamont at large. I will see you hopefully in the next video. Have a good rest of your day out there, wherever you are in this crazy blue and green spinning globe we call planet Earth. Peace out.